Huang here of Team Lotus Box. He's on the left, playing Grixis Delver. A very experienced pilot with Delver decks. He's won Opens here on the tour, in Legacy. Now he's at a bit of a disadvantage on the deck registration sheet against his opponent of Stephen Borakove.
Abrupt Decay is pretty nice to have access to in these mirrors. You can't counter it. I will say that I'm not a fan of him to Turok in this matchup. So I think that is an advantage for Bob that he's on Cabal Therapy.
Stephen on the play starts off turn 1 Delver of Secrets.
The therapies are in the sideboard, I suppose. The
Now,
Tombstalkers and the Tarmogoyfs, those are heavy hitters, though.
All right, Gataxian Probe from Bob will give us our first look at Stephen's hand. He has 2 Ponders, a Hymn to Turok, and 2 more lands. One of them is Wasteland. Now, Ryan, I know I've talked to you about Delver Mirrors. You have a choice turn 1 between Delver, Secrets, and Ponder. I'll tell you, I always run out the creature, but I know you told me that Ponder actually often is the better play.
If you're land light, this hand's already made, so you're gonna run your Delver out here.
Okay.
You want to get your threat online if your hand has something set up for the next turn. If you know you're playing against a combo deck, I'm pretty interested in firing off Ponder, trying to find Force of Will. Though you do already have him to Turok set out for the next turn anyway, so Delver is just pretty clearly correct in this context.
This is why these context-dependent decks are so hard. When I play combo, I play my cantrip turn 1 so that I win the next turn.
Yeah, usually you Ponder on turn 1 if you have no second land.
Stephen will get first damage in. Delver Secrets hits. And a chance to fire off him to Turok for Stephen. Bob has made a fetch land here, so the Wasteland play is not available. And Stephen doesn't want to run him into a day, so we'll actually play land and Ponder here.
You'd really hate to be Spell Pierced.
And you see actually Spell Pierce in Bob's hand. Exactly that reason. And Stephen draws. So we go back over to Bob. That Ponder likely to set up the Delver of Secrets on the following turn.
Yep, frequently that will be the case.
Now Bob does have a lot of 1-mana interaction of his own. He has Spell Pierce, Lightning Bolt, Deathrite Shaman, all available. And he's going to fetch here. He has seen a Wasteland in Stephen's hand, so he needs to be careful.
Yeah, he needs to be mindful of Wasteland. Probably doesn't want to be him to Turok next turn either. He has a Lightning Bolt. Question is how much he cares about this Delver just yet. The matchup very often just boils down to attrition.
But to dodge him to Turok, you see he plays Deathrite Shaman, he has to just play nothing, right? Stephen can Wasteland, move through combat, and then him.
Stephen actually leading on Underground Sea here.
Maybe he has something better in mind. He's going to Fatal Push the Deathrite Shaman.
You do kind of have to kill Deathrite Shaman every time.
Okay, so instead of converting the him, he wants to play a Spell Pierce proof Fatal Push, and then makes his own Deathrite Shaman.
And that's a more juicy target for the Lightning Bolt than the Delver is. You can kind of go either way.
Stephen leaving up the land, he passes. In Bob's spot, you want to fire off this end-step Lightning Bolt. It could be Daze, but there wasn't a Daze last time you checked.
Yeah, you might wait. I think there's a good argument for just being mana efficient and going for it now. Depending exactly what the follow-up's going to be on the next turn.
It looks like there's more action on Stephen's side. He's going to tap out to cast a Ponder, and Bob will Spell Pierce the Ponder.
Ponder is kind of getting worse all the time. Stephen has kind of suggested that he's not going to play that him to Turok into it.
Go back over to Bob. He's going to Lightning Bolt away the Delver. Wants to keep pace on mana.
The Shaman, rather.
The Shaman, thank you. Makes his own Deathrite Shaman. Wastelands away. Interesting one of Stephen's Underground Seas.
Black mana tends to be more impactful. You do see this Delver list that one Eternal Weekend had a couple Liliana the Last Hope, some Tombstalkers, so double black can be pretty important.
Yeah, and that's so good from Bob there. The Delver flips up him to Turok, but Stephen's hand is just 2 him to Turoks, and because of that Wasteland, he can't cast either.
Yep. Yeah, that's really good for Bob. Unfortunately, he's going to need to find some more red mana. Deathrite Shaman will provide that, so he can Lightning Bolt the Delver as well, as he does have another Bolt.
He'll start with Ponder here. Looks to find another land. Yeah, he's been down to 12 off those hits off the Insectile Aberration, but especially when you see things like a fetch land on top of the deck here, this looks like Bob has done the work he needs to gain control of the board.
Yep. Yeah, Delver Mirror is largely about jockeying for position. As long as you stabilize Well, actually, against Sultai, you don't even need to have that much life. Against Grixis, you do, because you can be lightning bolted. You don't really go below 7. But against Sultai, you can play with your life a lot more.
And this is a great one. We see Bob makes Gurmag Angler. What I like is how he's played from behind here. He was on the draw. He was really behind on Deathrite Shamans and just wasteland pressure. So we played this conservative line from behind well enough to then capitalize on Steven. I think with making that it was the turn where we had 3 lands and he fetched for a Ponder. And that was, Steven pushed a little too hard and Bob was ready.
Yeah.
Force of Will take care of Tarmogoyf.
And now Bob's so light on cards in hand, those Hymn to Turoks, when Steven's able to cast them eventually, they're just not going to matter.
Right.
Bob's played very aggressively just to get ahead on the battlefield.
Deathrite Shaman takes care of the last land in graveyards. Lightning bolts down the Insectile Aberration. Angler swings for 5. Bob's hand is just a Brainstorm. There's things about might as well cast. Deathrite Shaman, fetch land, and Force of Will the top 3. He'll take the fetch land and play it.
Yep, exposing no cards to a discard spell.
Yeah, and Steven missing on the black mana. Not that it even matters anymore.
Right.
Bob draws Deathrite Shaman. He'll fetch. Does not want to draw that Force of Will.
Nope. And with the second Underground Sea being the fine, he'll be able to activate both Deathrite Shamans going forward, and the damage dealing ability matters a lot more than life right now.
Shaman's cast. Angler swings. Steven goes down to 8.
Threatening lethal on the very next turn.
Drains him down to 6 with the Shaman. A draw of Tarmogoyf from Steven. We'll keep him alive for a turn, but he'll pack up the cards, and it's Bob Huang taking game 1.
And Tarmogoyf's upper limit in these matchups, usually 4-5. Liliana the Last Hope, the one way to get it to a 5-6, so Angler just outsizes it.
And these matchups really just so much happening on each side of the board. It's why a veteran of this archetype like Bob Huang is so hard to play against.
Yes.
So look at the sideboards. For Sultai Delver, Steven Borakove. He has 2 Thoughtseize, 2 Surgical Extractions, some Toxic Deluges, 2 Jaces, a Dread of Night, Invasive Surgery, Pithing Needle, Diabolic Edict, Abrupt Decay, Sylvan Library, and Cluster Storm. You
do like to have a good amount of removal. In particular, dealing with Gurmag Angler is very important. For that reason, Diabolic Edict is one of the cards you're reaching for in the sideboard. Abrupt Decay is still fine. It's less good because it can't kill Anger, but it still deals with Deathrite Shaman, which is always very important. And the stuff you might reach for, you got some maybes and Toxic Deluge and Jace the Mind Sculptor. Depending on how much you want to reach with this Sultai build, you can actually warp towards being more of a control deck. So you're just like Deathrite Shamans and Planeswalkers, where Bob would be likely left on Delver of Secrets. So you're doing all right there. And you do want to make sure that you have answers to all the creatures on the other side of the battlefield. And if you're able to get to the point to stick Jace, it's incredible. It is difficult, though. There's Spell Pierces and Dazes, so there's a good argument for leaving him on the bench as well. So right now with Legacy, how mindful do you think Steven needs to be of the card True Name Nemesis coming out of Grixis Delver? It's always around. Usually you see 1 or 2 copies in 75s. So your Deluges, your Diabolic Edicts, there needs to be some number of these. Yeah, I think you 100% want that Edict, and then the Deluges, they are enticing. And now on Bob Huang's side with Grixis Delver, his sideboard starts with some graveyard hate and discard. Cabal Therapy, Surgical Extraction. He also has Diabolic Edict, Pyroblast, Grim Lavamancer, Abrade, Ancient Grudge, Price of Progress, Is It Staticaster, and Pithing Needle. You mentioned Steven can take a control route in this matchup. Does Bob try to do the same, or does he just try to slide in under Steven? So you do still need to have answers for these large creatures. They're not going anywhere. Diabolic Edict for Tarmogoyf is going to be pretty important here. Pyroblast fights over a lot of the spells that matter here, and whether it's Delver or Jace the Mind Sculptor, it can cover that. So that one's just going to be good no matter what your opponent is doing. There's a reasonable argument for Pithing Needle, because you can expect Liliana the Last Hope and Jace the Mind Sculptor, though. Okay. Once you've seen 2, especially a player like Bob Huang, who top-8'd last week, and you see a lot of these 2 Hymn to Turoks, you would assume Steven might just be on the winning deck list? Yeah, there's a very real chance of it. Game 2 underway. Steven starting off with Underground Sea. For the second time, he has turn 1 Delver of Secrets. And Bob has reached for the Grim Lavamancers. Okay, so those are in. Daze on Lavamancer, Daze on Daze, and both players control a 1/1. Like the attack by Steven. Bob's certainly not going to block that.
I don't want that trade. Not.
This Lava Man is planning on killing the Delver and living to tell about it.
Tax. And does he have a fatal push? Something like that? He does not. He has Ponder. So Bob should be able to, with a fetch land, he can convert this Grim Lavamancer into a removal for the Delver of Secrets.
It's a neat ponder for Steven. There are 2 wastelands in those holdings.
Okay.
You have a very real chance of stopping Bob from being able to play the game.
So Steven does keep the wastelands and draws. Now, but what happens if Bob just wastelands Steven here? Then both players are manaless?
Yep. And then it just comes down to who has more lands that they can peel off the top.
And Bob has the Volcanicon, but he didn't have it off a fetch land, which actually means this Grim Lavamancer doesn't get to activate here. And now those wastelands that Steven kept look so much better.
And it looks like Bob is full of days and light on lands.
Wasteland from Steven. In response, Bob's going to attempt to brainstorm.
Oh no, Steven don't. And now Bob gets to daze him back, and that counters the wasteland. That's so good for Bob.
Steven picks up to daze the brainstorm. You're right. He picks it up. Not only, it doesn't even matter if he wins this war. The wasteland trigger's gone.
Yep, that's what Bob cared about. Really well played by Bob.
Oh. So I know that's one of those plays where if you're a veteran of Delver Mirrors, you learn not to make it. I just want to share here that if I'm playing this game, I'm just doing exactly what Steven did there.
Yeah.
And then when he picked up the land, I'd look at the board and be like, huh, that was really bad for me.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I should have seen that coming.
Right. Yeah.
An expensive lesson for Steven.
You learn a lot of these things the hard way.
Yeah.
Delver Mirror, very punishing.
Well, you forget that there's a wasteland trigger on the stack, and that by letting him pick up the land, he's actually just already winning the counterfight.
And Steven doesn't know this, but because Bob is so land light, that daze was very important for him to convert.
Yeah. So we go back to Bob. Now he gets to replay the Volcanic Island. Because he cast that Daze and Brainstorm, there's the fuel for the Grim Lavamancer. This is just such a good spot for Bob. Plays the land and passes. Delver flips off Daze. Before he draws that, Bob will shoot down the Insectile Aberration.
Yeah, Bob waits for upkeep to get that extra information.
Now there's another wasteland from Steven. And that was still Bob's only land. He'll attack for 1. It looks like off his Brainstorm, he actually was Brainstorm locked. Didn't find any lands or fetch lands. So Gitaxian Probe will show more. We have 2 more lands in Steven's hand, a Tarmogoyf, a Toxic Deluge, and a Daze.
Yep, the Daze he knew about, though it is still going to be a problem. When you're land light, you just kind of have to play into it.
Yeah, there's a Tarmogoyf waiting, and that'll help Steven. But his pressure, Bob has time to recover.
Unfortunately, Bob is going to discard here.
He counted. Looks like he actually...
Oh, 7 exactly.
Yeah, he has enough. 1 land from Steven, building his way toward Tarmogoyf, and Bob finds Tropical Island. He'll attack for 1.
Keep in mind, in Grixis Delver, Tropical Island is basically just basic island.
Yeah, the green's there for Deathrite Shaman activations.
You can still cast it if you have it, specifically Deathrite Shaman. But for the most part, Tropical Island is the worst land in the deck.
And remember, there's a Daze in Steven's hand, and Bob knows it. So you see him kind of planning out this turn here. He can't brainstorm exactly.
Right.
He's gonna make Deathrite Shaman. Then he knows that this could get dazed.
And if he gets dazed, he knows he can't get hit by Tarmogoyf on the following turn.
Because there's no Tropical Island.
Well,
oh no,
you have to pick up a land. Yeah.
Sure. Fatal Push from Steven takes care of the Deathrite. Steven passes. Wasteland from Bob. Maybe he can be the Wasteland player here.
Yeah, things are turning around a little bit.
There's that nice play where you can play Wasteland, make your 1-mana spell, and then when they don't daze it, then you Wasteland them.
Unclear that he has a 1-mana spell he necessarily wants to go for. Yeah, tough to cast Brainstorm when you don't know if you'll be able to reset your top of your deck.
Well, looks like he does. Delver of Secrets. Steven says that resolves, and now Bob Wastelands away the Underground Sea. Steven, though, has a Brainstorm of his own in hand, an uncracked fetch land. It's a nice opportunity to make that play.
You really don't want to crack the fetch land and cast Brainstorm. And here is Underground Sea. Find out if Steven is in the territory where he's trying to brainstorm into a land. That is never the spot you want to be in.
If you're wondering about that card, though, the Wasteland happened during upkeeps. Bob timed it there so Steven wouldn't get extra mana. He'll cast Brainstorm.
Okay, he found a land, found a tropical island.
So this is interesting, right? Bob had Daze in his hand and chose not to Daze this Brainstorm.
Well, he knows about the Daze in Steven's hand. He doesn't really want to get dazed back.
Okay. And Deathrite Shaman from Steven. And now Bob will Daze that one. He's willing to fight the Daze War here. He can't Grim Lavamancer shoot down the Shaman unless he has just red mana on top of the deck. Top card. Not going to reveal it.
And you hope it's a land.
Oh, it's a fetch land.
All right.
Oh, nice.
That is ideal.
All right.
And I like what Bob has done here. By forcing that Daze out of Steven, that means if he kills this Deathrite Shaman, there's no way that Liliana the Last Hope can come down in the next turn. So he'll be able to keep his Grim Lavamancer and his Delver for the immediate future.
So the Deathrite Shaman is answered. And you watch this, Bob. So to recap here, Bob is on the draw in a Delver Mirror against an opponent who played a turn one threat, multiple Wastelands, and multiple Dazes, and yet you're finding him still ahead on resources.
And I think Bob, who is so flush with Daze, he also has the possibility to Daze a potential Tarmogoyf on this turn. It's really well navigated by Bob.
You see, once again, a Brainstorm with Steven. There's the Daze in Bob's hand still. No thank you.
This looks like a lot of the heavier stuff has come in for Steven. You see Jace the Mind Sculptor, Toxic Deluge is kicking around.
Yeah, he's got heavy things, but he only has one land here, and on top of that, it's not a fetch land. So he can play a Tarmogoyf next turn, but he is turns away from doing anything else.
Yeah, and this stuff all just gets dazed.
Delver still does not flip.
And that's fine. Bob's done a great job of managing the battlefield. He doesn't need this flip with too much immediacy. Steven also has access to an Abrupt Decay, so we can just kill it anyway. Looks like Bob has a young Pyromancer as well. Could potentially deploy that.
Go cast Brainstorm. 1, 2, and 3. If Delver flipping is a priority for him, he'll be able to set that up now.
I think he's kind of looking for Wasteland. He'd like to just keep applying pressure on that mana base there, especially from that Brainstorm that did not result in a fetch land.
Yeah, you know that Steven might be Brainstorm locked. If that's true, taking care of his lands is just a game-winning play.
Yeah.
Resolving the Brainstorm, 2 on top. Plays Misty Rainforest, attacks with both creatures, Steven to 11.
And we'll see if Bob cracks the fetch land. He doesn't. Sometimes what you do with Delver and Brainstorm in a fetch land, you leave a card that will flip the Delver that you don't want to have in your hand, and then you reveal it to your Delver, and then you crack the fetch land to shuffle on your upkeep. And over for Steven, he's going to be stuck on 2 lands for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, he has a Tarmogoyf he can go for, but Bob's at the ready with the Daze.
And yeah, we're not waiting for the upkeep, so Bob just has some cards he just wants nothing to do with that he Brainstormed away there.
Yeah, if he had an instant on top of his deck, then he would have waited, revealed, and then cracked fetch land. So it looks like what he's going to do is he's Brainstorming instead here.
And doing this on the end step. When you're this far ahead, trying to go for that Delver flip, it makes some sense.
Steven going to Daze the Brainstorm. That'll work. Then he's going to Abrupt Decay the Delver of Secrets.
I gotta say, Bob getting that end step Brainstorm Daze is a pretty big win for Bob.
Because Steven can't replay the land this turn, he has to wait.
Well, also, it's just, he's probably gonna have to play into Daze again somewhere down the line, and that Brainstorm was he's just gonna have to redraw one of those cards.
Now Bob will play Young Pyromancer. Hits in for 1 with the Grim Lavamancer.
That's one you want to Daze.
Yeah, and he got Daze on something else. And now, yes, Steven gets Tarmogoyf. Bob still has the Daze, and look at this show of strength. He just says, nah,
yeah, he has
we're
Diabolic
good.
Edict in hand. This is fine.
We'll cast that, get a 1/1 for his work. And 3 more. Steven drops to 7.
This game is closing quickly. It's like Bob has a Lightning Bolt in hand. Not to mention that Grim Lavamancer is just reach.
Toxic Deluge for Steven. See how much, looks like he's going to pay 1, goes to 6.
This one's worth dazing.
Yeah, it's time. Daze, that'll put a 5th point of power into play for Bob. It's almost lethal.
And that's going to do it.
He extends the hand. Bob Huang, 2-0 winner here. You know, he had top 4 finisher last weekend at the tournament at Eternal Weekend, and you see why. That was
ton of legacy experience, and you just see it there. He played that so well.